What is good, everybody? Hello, hello. It is Momentum Monday, and I'm going to talk about a couple of things that you can start doing if you've never practiced this before. And if it's something that you're like, ooh, I need to start practicing this, I'm going to give you a couple of things to start creating more space in your life to really just break patterning that is not healthy for you. So, for example, if you have some limiting belief boxes that are from your programming growing up, right, that you still operate from today, right, or if there's some inability to manage your emotions because maybe in your family of origin you didn't talk about emotions, you don't even have a language for communicating and expressing yourself in really safe and healthy ways, right? Or maybe you just find that you're constantly in a state of anxiety and stressed and overwhelmed, yet wondering, like, is this really my life? Like, is this what it's about? Like, am I supposed to be living like this all the time? This does not feel like thriving, right? This feels like survival. If you might have things in your life that you enjoy, let's say that you do enjoy your job and you enjoy going out on the weekends, you still feel like you're going through the motions in the sense of, I wake up, I work for the weekends, right? And then I put some money aside, right? And it's just, there's no sense of wonder. There's no sense of awe. The creativity box seems closed. And it can just be a very somewhat shallow and a suffocating sense of being, right? So what I want to help you do today is break the programming, because although it's helpful to recognize and understand how that programming came to be, the thing that's even more powerful and transformational is recognizing that only you, right, have the power to manage your thoughts, to manage your emotions, to do your inner healing, and actually recognize that maybe there are some issues there that you have left unaddressed, and they've been reflected back at you through relationships or maybe through anger, right, that you've expressed, but they're still highlighting to you there's something that's off and that I need to look at. It's inviting your attention, right? So I'm going to give you a couple of things to start doing. Again, not as big of a deal how that came to be. Important, but far more important is what you do now, right? And this is something that you can't blame. You can't point the finger at anybody else. It's going to take radical responsibility to do all that I'm sharing right now, right? So a lot of times we get to a point where enough is enough, where I can't be in any more relationships like that, where I can't let my boundaries or myself be violated anymore. So for example, that's often with folks that are, recovering from people pleasing or codependency, and they're so accustomed to giving all themselves away at the detriment of themselves. And now it just feels so foreign to actually start setting boundaries, right? It can feel like an identity crisis, and that can be really jarring, right? Boundaries can feel, they can make us feel bad, right? But the most important thing is they protect us. They help keep us mentally, emotionally healthy, right? So they're really, really important. But a lot of times we won't set those because of how it's going to make us feel, right? Strangely enough. So a couple of things that you can start doing to break the programming and create more space in your life, more space mentally, more space emotionally, more space spiritually, more space for you to just show up and be you, right? So if you were somebody that was trained to just do, go, there's this underlying programming that I'm not enough, that I have to perform, that I have to achieve, that I have to make this happen, or this is going to happen, or I'll be perceived this way, right? But I am giving you permission to pause and make space in your life for you. So I'm going to give you a couple things. Okay. Number one is recognize that without consciousness, right, there is no change. Without consciousness, there's no change. So typically in the world, we live our lives subconsciously, which is also known as autopilot. And subconsciously, we can't control what's going on there. A lot of times what's subconscious comes up when we're being triggered. We have an emotional trigger of some kind. We are experiencing pain. Like, we start to see what's going on subconsciously when we're put in different situations and experiences, right? So The key here, though, is to start raising your consciousness. And how you do that is by becoming more self-aware. So rather than just doing the same thing every day, right? Going through the motions every day, just task mastering the day, right? Just checking things off, making a to-do list and just checking it off so you feel a sense of accomplishment, but don't really show up fully in any one of those things. You get them done, but you're not really in it and invested and fully present, right? And one of the best ways you can tell is your breathing. A lot of times when we're not present, we're breathing so shallow. We're not doing full breath at all. So you can kind of check into this stuff when you start paying attention. So setting time in your day, even if it's on your lunch break, if you take a 15-minute break in between calls, if it's in a drive where you don't turn on music and you just, reflect and you start breathing in the car and doing deep breathing exercises in the car, of course, with your eyes open in the car, right? There are ways, is what I'm saying. But the key is to start becoming conscious of how you're showing up. Why am I doing that? Why am I feeling this way? What is up for me right now, right? And you can start seeing where there's space and windows in your life for you that you could be missing, right? There's a quote that says, be here now. So any area of your life where you're not being here now is an area where you've trained yourself not to be present. So how can you intentionally start being more present? Start being more self-aware of any activity that you do. Start being more aware of what you're doing when you're doing it, right? Anything from how you wake up in the morning, your morning routine, how you get dressed, if you're driving to work, if you're working from home, how you set up space for that, how you are treating and caring for yourself. Start paying attention to that and start paying attention and observing yourself throughout your day. How do you show up in your interactions, right? What starts to bother you or start to affect you in some kind of way? Start becoming self-aware. And you can even keep notes on your phone. But the key is to start becoming more aware of what's going on so that you can recognize that you don't have to keep doing the same thing, right? And continuing to see those same results in your life. Because what you show people, right, you're treating them. What you're showing them is informing them how to treat you, better said, right? So you can't expect different reactions from folks unless you're showing up differently. And there's plenty of opportunities for us to do that. We're just not always present and aware. So that is my encouragement number one. Recognize that there is no change without consciousness. So any area where you're not practicing self-awareness, where you're not practicing being present, where you are running from a situation, avoiding a situation, detaching or disassociating from a situation, that could have become a habit for you. And in some situations, maybe that's healthy, but others it might not be. And it could just be a learned pattern that you keep doing. So start paying attention to your own programming. And you can only do that through self-awareness. And you can start taking notes as you do that. Journaling is a great way too to keep evidence or a file of what actually is going on. So you can start then to decide, what do you want to change? And you can attach strategies to that as well and develop new rituals and practices and things that you enjoy showing up for, things that make you better, that you're actually deciding to do. Nobody is telling you to do these things anymore. You actually decide to do them. All right. So that's a loaded number one. Number two is appreciation. Appreciation. I think about this a lot with relationships. Like, how often when you start your day, do you just send a text of appreciation to somebody? A lot of times we are trained to look at what's wrong, to find the dirt, not to call out the golden people, even ourselves, right? And how we treat ourselves is often how we treat other people. So start practicing appreciation, right? Like, if there's anything that you want to master, get really good at, it's that. Another way to say that too is gratitude. But sometimes people don't always receive, gratitude and gratitude lists, but actually think about what you appreciate. What do you value? What do you appreciate? Start focusing on that more and more in your life, because what you focus on grows more in your life. So you'll actually start to recognize it more in your life, and more of that will start to become available to you. So rather than being in a lack or limited mindset in space or state consistently, you can actually shift into an abundant state. Okay, and live from that. But that's going to require that you intentionally start appreciating things, right? So everything that you have, right, that's a gift. right? And you have what a lot of people are praying for, right? So start appreciating what you do have, and more will start becoming present for you. You'll start picking up on it more and more. You'll find more things to appreciate. So that is huge because it's a great training for yourself, right? And your focus, but it also creates more space because there is energy tied to appreciation, just like there's energy tied to things that are destructive and negative. One is catabolic and breaks things down and is destructive. The other is anabolic and it's building and life-giving, right? It actually gives us energy. So if you think about it, they're both going to take focus, right? But one of them actually gives you life and gives you energy. So it's not just some cute thing to do. It actually starts changing you from the inside out, right? When you start to think better, you start to feel better or emote better, right? You have more space to process emotionally actually as well. And you start to behave differently as well. You might have more energy to do things that you didn't have to do before. So that's really, really important to start practicing appreciation. Okay, so that is number 2. Number 3 is, this is one that people don't really like, but say no without apologizing and without excuses. So get really good at practicing your boundaries. So know that you as an adult, right, are a self-reliant individual, right? So you get to set the boundaries for how you are going to operate and what you are going to allow in your life and what you are not going to allow in your life and what you are going to give access to and what you're not going to give access to. This is really, really important. It's not just something that's a cute hashtag boundaries. This is something that's really important for your mental health, your emotional health, your spiritual health. Not everyone is a safe person, okay? Not everyone can you tell intimate details of your life to and allow them and trust that to them to handle and carry that well. Not everybody has that same capacity. Not everybody has the same heart as you. Not everybody has the same understanding and awareness as you, right? Not everybody has the same capacity. So it's really important to be able to assess who those people are in your life. And sometimes it's a therapist, right? Sometimes it's a coach, somebody that actually has a confidentiality policy, right? Somebody that's not intimately connected to relationships in your life and that is a safe space for you to discuss details of your life that you do need to discuss, right? That it's an actual healthy and safe person that could also challenge you to show up differently and to give you tools to do that, right? Tools to communicate better, tools to develop your emotional language and to start processing and expressing your emotions, tools to start breaking out of limiting patterns and understand where that came from or heal your inner child, right? There's a lot that you get back from a financial investment and a time investment into therapy. The growth that you go through from the self-reflection, from applying the tools, from practicing new modalities, right, in your life and integrating healthy habits, right, and shifts into your life is phenomenal, right? You can't put a price on that. It will radically transform your life. So think about that though. Something that we typically do as humans is we feel obligated to tell people why we can't do something, right? Like we feel bad that we're not going to show up to this thing because we think it's going to make them feel some kind of way or think some sort of way about us. So we tell them why we're not going to commit to make us feel better, right? But you're not obligated to do that. You don't have to do that at all, actually, right? Or we say, I'm sorry all the time when setting a boundary, and you don't have to apologize for boundaries. You actually have the freedom to choose if you're going to do something or not, and you don't have to apologize for that. You actually have the freedom, right, and audacity as a human to just say no, and that's it. Like you don't have to explain yourself. You don't have to prove yourself. So what can help in setting boundaries is first, knowing where those need to be set and what that needs to look like, right? You are an adult that gets to set the rules for how this relationship is going to be in your life. So a lot of times I see this with parent-child relationships, right? When you're a child, a lot of times the parents, right, if you had these parental figures in your life, they would set the rules for how you showed up in the home, in the environment that you were raised in, right? You followed these rules and then you got these rewards or punishments, right? So you might have grown up and continued that pattern, or might even have some of that pattern still happening with parents, right? Or if you didn't have these parental figures, or if you had figures that were in your life that did not model a lot of healthy inner healing and personal development, you might have learned a lot of unhealthy patterns to self-protect that you could still operate in when around family. So for example, you could live your whole life as an adult and be established and doing really well, but you could be in an interaction with a parent and go regress back into a child self and feel like that parent is controlling you and what they say or what they do. And so you forget that you're actually an adult and you get to decide how they now are in your life and what the dynamic of that relationship looks like, or if that's even possible. And I know that that sounds intense and harsh to some, but it actually is crucial when it comes to your own health, okay? So being in the habit and practice of actually recognizing, what does this relationship look like, right? If somebody does not have capacity to communicate in healthy ways, to respect boundaries, to be a safe space to share and communicate with, then what does that look like for relationship? How are they going to be in my life, right? Are we just going to have visits on holidays? Are we going to call each other occasionally? And am I going to really invest in them being in my world, right? Like, what does that look like? Having a picture and actually reflecting on that provides a level of vision and safety for you. When you have that clarity, you can actually stick to it and you can enforce boundaries then, right? So then boundaries would look like fighting for the relationship. Let's say you chose to do that, but not fighting the person, not defending yourself. And when it turns some sort of, you can then enforce your boundaries and set the how we're going to do relationship now, right? And what it is that you want and what it is that you need. And you can do that in a very authentic, gracious, kind way, but it's only when you're clear on the vision, right? And you're able to understand what those boundaries are and communicate it in a space where it's not charged and people aren't on edge, right? So it is very much possible, but it's essential that you get clear on what that is so that you can shift that dynamic and actually create space to have a really healthy relationship and to evolve as a human, so that you're not just living out old patterning that doesn't suit you, but you're living in the fullness of who you're put on this earth to be, and you're allowing people to appreciate and celebrate who that is and to be a part of your life. But it doesn't come by continuing to do the same things or letting people control you or manipulate you into what is comfortable for them. So it's really important to, again, create space for you to detach and really process, again, patterns that aren't healthy so that you can show up in really healthy, dynamic ways, okay? Because not everybody is going to choose to do the growth and development, which means not everybody can have the same access to you, or not everybody can go to different levels with you or just travel with you in different seasons of your life. So it's really important to pay attention to that. And then lastly, what I would say is start developing, whether this has to be weekly time, start developing space in your life. This sounds like crazy. Like, I don't have time, I'm so busy. But if you actually look at your calendar, one of the best exercises that you can do, if you actually on a piece of paper just draw out a clock and all of the hours in a day, and then start writing down what happens in all of those hours. Like on a typical day, what do you do? What the average person finds is that there's like huge chunks of time on a full calendar, right? That they don't remember what they're doing in those windows of time. Like, what actually happened from 3 to 4? Like, where was I at? Or what happened from like 7 to 8:30? Like, what was I doing, right? Or what happened from 8 to 9 even? Like, where was I? Like, was I drifting? Was I just scrolling on social media? Was I watching some movie? Like, was I talking on a conversation that I didn't need to be talking on, right? Because think about this, right? Great people talk about ideas and vision, not other people. So sometimes we get on the phone and talk about some really low level stuff that zaps our energy, and it zapped an hour of our time. So that's an example of a boundary. Like, I'm no longer going to create space in my life to participate in things that are not fruitful and life-giving, right? When I'm committed to growth, when I'm committed to moving forward, when I'm committed to my impact, I need to operate differently, and I need to model that for other people too, right? So at any rate, when you look at your time and you start seeing where your gaps are, start creating space in your life for you. This is going to feel really awkward, again, if you were a people pleaser or codependent, right? And had these habits of always blocking out your space for other people. But it is essential that you start developing space to breathe, start developing space to journal, start developing space to develop your spirituality, start developing space to develop your emotional health, your mental health. Start exploring ways that you can care for yourself. And it could be simple things like exercising and getting clear on what that looks like, and how you're going to give yourself optimum nutrition, and how you're going to actually care for yourself and what you put in your body and what you need, or how you sleep, and different habits around sleeping, right? Or different things that you participate in throughout the day. Maybe you replace those things to create more space for you. It is doable, and it's incredibly eye-opening if you just look at your bank statement, if you look at your phone screen time, if you look at, the subscriptions that you have, the movies that you're buying, whatever it is that you're doing, if you replace some of these zoning out habits with actually reflective, intentional time, it will bring life and energy back to you. It will bring so much more awareness to your life, where you can start creating more ways to care for yourself, where you can start establishing new habits, practices, rituals, where you can start actually getting clear on how life is going to go for you, and how you are going to intentionally break your programming and show up as you actually want to, right? This happens in the day-to-day. We actually change one day at a time, one moment at a time, one step at a time. But without vision, the people perish. When we don't have vision, we don't have motive. We don't have a why. We don't have this strong motivation to do something, right? And the minute it gets hard, we're like, whatever, I'm going to go back to this old thing because that's comfortable. That's familiar. Even if it's anxiety, rather than actually understanding like why I have these anxious triggers, why I have panic attacks, why I tend to react and handle life this way and get really, really overwhelmed and, want people to rescue me or want to vent about my stuff, right? Rather than doing that, we can start understanding what is at the root of that anxiety. What are ways that I can manage my anxiety better? What are ways that I can actually create buffers in my life so it doesn't have to get to an extreme where I have a meltdown of some kind? This is all hypothetical, so I'm not shaming anybody that is actually really struggling with anxiety, but I'm giving you an example. There are things that we can do to shift how we show up and to stop tolerating things that we actually don't want, right? We get what we tolerate. We get what we think about, whether we want it or not. Like, it really is that simple. So we need to start thinking about what we're thinking about. We need to actually start paying attention to what our emotions are telling us. We need to start looking at what we're storing up in our heart, right? And what is left unhealed that we're projecting out into the world, right? We need to be willing to do some inner healing work. But before we can dive into all of that, these are some things just to get you started on that journey, and just recognize, again, without consciousness, there's no change at all. And you can even start exposing yourself and surrounding yourself to people that are committed to doing this work, okay? Because the ones that do the work can recognize and acknowledge and celebrate and appreciate the work that you're doing. And the ones that don't do the work probably can't even see all the work that you're doing. They can't see how beautiful it is, how brave and courageous and bold you are for filling gaps that you've had in your own life and doing it in healthy, high-functioning ways, right? Not running, not numbing, but actually facing things that you desire to change in your life and doing it with a lot of integrity, right? So that is my Momentum Monday word. I encourage you to start creating space in your life for you to break unhealthy programming, just stop tolerating it as if that's how you have to live. It isn't how you have to live. You don't have to accept bad programming. You can acknowledge it. You can become aware of it, and you can start taking steps to transform it, right? And if you're a believer, I believe it's by God's power and for his glory. There's only so far that willpower can take you. So when we lean on Holy Spirit, when we ask for Holy Spirit, that's when we get this divine intervention and this divine strength, which is like nothing you probably ever experience. And you can really step into some radical freedom that way. For who the Son sets free is free indeed, right? All right, guys, I hope this message blessed you. If it did, make sure that you like it, that you subscribe. You can also copy the link and share it with a friend, particularly if you really sense that this would resonate with them and you want it to come from maybe a different human other than you. Go ahead and do that. You can also connect with me at julianapage.com. There's self-mastery courses over there, coaching programs, books, and resources to really help you do your work. So be blessed. And until next time, bye, guys.